first of all, it's so good to see all of you. We've been in this fight for a long time, and it looks like we're going to be in it for a while longer. We're incredibly honored today to have Cecile Richards with us. She needs no introduction, but I'll give her a little introduction just as a reminder. She was the president of Planned Parenthood, the co-founder of Supermajority. She's a co-chair of American Bridge, one of my favorite organizations, and just honestly an all-around kick-ass, badass woman. So, and I thought we all could use a little of that right now. Today's moderator is our very own Rosa Colquist. She is also an inspiring woman. She is the head of our Oregon Women for Biden. She's the vice chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon. And I don't know if all of you guys know this, but somebody sprinkled some pixie dust on Rosa, because I think last week she was with President Biden doing phone banking. Today she's with Cecile. So we all need to hang out with her more. So just a couple of things. One of the things that I do from time to time is there's a countdown clock that I follow. I check in every so often to see how close we are to the election. So today we're 10 days, 250 hours, something like 15,000 minutes. There's still time for us to make an impact. And there's a lot of noise out there right now. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about today is polling. But the reminder that I would give all of us is that the only poll that matters is our vote. That's it. And there's a lot of voter suppression efforts going on, and voter suppression takes a lot of different forms. And one of the things that people try to do to suppress your vote is to discourage you by saying it's a lost cause, you don't have a chance, don't bother to show up, it won't matter. And we know that it matters, and we know that women are the ones that can make a difference. We've done it in the past, and we'll do it again. And I'm looking at some of you, and I know there's really tough fights going on. Tina, I think of you often in Wisconsin. I know it's tough there. Gloria, I know things are tough in Georgia. Sandy, I know things are tough in Pennsylvania, but we've got to just stick with it. So I think the thing that we want, not just this group to remember, but we want all the women across our networks to remember, is that get out the vote doesn't have to be going to a polling or going to a phone bank or knocking on doors. I mean, Kimmy in California is our patron saint of get out the vote, but each one of us can be a mini get out the vote operation. And we can do it with our friends and family. And if we multiply that over tens of thousands of women, we can make a difference. So with that, as a preface, I'm going to turn things over to Rosa, our moderator, and so that we can get started.
You bet. Jill, thank you so very much. I too want to join you in welcoming Cecile and all of the wonderful women that are on this call today. We are on a journey, and none of us can make it alone. We all need each other to make it. So thank you so much for your participation today. And Cecile, I've gotten over my girl fanning, so I think I'm ready. We have so much to get into, so let's just jump right in. Cecile, we have women watching from all over the country. Let's start our discussion today with your 30,000-foot view of where we are and exactly what's at stake in this election.
Well, thank you, Rosa and Jill and everybody. And I love seeing where everybody's calling in from and texting in from or Zooming in from, because women are everywhere. And to be honest, there's not a single election in this country that isn't going to be determined by women getting out to vote. So everywhere you are, from city council to state legislative races to United States Senate, the turnout of women voters is critical. And I also just want to I know it seems like an eternity ago, but thank you for electing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I mean, the difference, I think, sometimes we just, when we're progressives and we just want the world to change, we just keep going forward. And sometimes we don't even stop to go, okay, the things that you all did collectively to elect the president and the vice president, and then of course to send Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff to the United States Senate in Georgia has made all the difference. It was the child tax credit. It's the reason we have 10 million new jobs that were created under this administration. It's the reason we have a 50-year unemployment rate. These are things that, as we know, the Republicans have voted against every single opportunity. And so I hope you can just take a moment, even as we go to these last 10 days of total anxiety, and just recognize the power of what women did in 2020 and can do in 2022 and will continue to do. I also just have to say, because again, in the category of like things to just, make you stand up about 6 inches taller, is the fact that we have Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court is because of you. And that isn't, and her impact, of course, we were already seeing it because she's already been brilliant. That's going to be a lifetime. That's going to affect our kids and our grandkids. And so again, I just think sometimes we have to start with celebrating our wins and then going on so we can fight to win some more. I think so in terms of where we're at right now, Rosa, I think the most important thing to know is women are voting. And actually, I know someone's on from Wisconsin. Who was on? I can't, anyway, of course, I'm just looking at what Tom Bonnier had just put up. I don't know if any of y'all follow Tom on Target Smart, but he's really been an invaluable source of information until we all get shut off Twitter. He's been an invaluable source of information about what's happening at this moment. And sometimes I just like to look, not because it's going to be the determinative fact, but it actually kind of helps put some things in perspective. We are now seeing that Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, all critical states, where the gender gap is already larger than it was in 2020. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have a ton of work to do, as Jill said, between now and Election Day, because there's millions of people who haven't voted. But it is an indication that the kind of enthusiasm that we saw as women rushed to register to vote after the Dobbs decision, literally, breaking records in Kansas, in Pennsylvania, that energy and appreciation for how much this election matters has not been lost. But there are millions of people, as we know, you all have been doing electoral politics now long enough to know that there are millions of eligible voters that don't go vote in a midterm election. And I think that when we talk, and we'll get into the conversation about the Dobbs decision, and I think and how this has sort of recast this election, it's almost been the biggest single disruptive force we could have ever seen in a midterm election. It is really impacting two groups of women voters that are critical to all of us. That is, women who are with us but don't always vote in off years, and there's a lot of them, and independent women, or women who vote Democratic sometime, but they may have hated Donald Trump, but they're not completely convinced about us. They are all having to now face the fact that the Republican Party has become so extreme. And I mean, Pennsylvania, like looking at you, right? You think at Doug Mastriano, you couldn't really get a worse candidate. This is really forcing independent women, and maybe even some Republican women, to say this party is too extreme to put them in power. So I do think that we have momentum at this moment, but as we know, it is all now, we're not going to recast. There's not going to be any other single event, I think, that is going to reshape the dynamic. In fact, interestingly enough, I was on another call this morning about, the Dr. Oz, John Fetterman debate. And I know folks being concerned about this, our valiant candidate, John Fetterman. If we could just give a moment for this man who is putting it all on the line for all of us to beat a complete, like whatever, I don't even want to use the words. I think that it is showing that it did not really reshape the race. And so what we have to do as an example in a state of Pennsylvania is get every single woman in our network out to vote. So quit looking at the polls. It's just like, it's go time.
So thank you so very much for that. Extremely helpful for all of us. I don't think I need to tell you that Democrats have a lot of opinions, especially when it comes to messaging. some Democratic electeds, and some of those in the media, as you well know, are saying that the Democratic message must be broader than the priority singular issue of abortion. They think that we need more specificity on quote unquote kitchen table topics. How would you explain to these folks that abortion rights are an economic justice issue?
Well, I couldn't agree more, Rosa. And I don't think that, look, I think the reason that a lot of Democratic candidates are running advertising against their opponents, whether it's Mark Kelly in Arizona, Stacey Abrams in Georgia, Beto O'Rourke in Texas, Democratic candidates are running ads on this issue because it is the single biggest hit that makes Republicans unacceptable to voters. And I mean, not just women voters, but voters up and down, young voters, male voters, just everyone. And so I think it's important to say they're not doing it to just be a, kind of as some sort of like sign of solidarity. They're doing it because it is a very, very important issue to people in this country. And it is the first time in our Constitution that a right has literally been taken away, a constitutional right has been taken away from people. So it's when folks say to me sometimes, well, why are folks so surprised? Because we kind of saw the way that Donald Trump was promising to put on judges that would overturn Roe, et cetera. It's like, well, people are surprised for a legitimate reason. This has never happened in our history. It's so extreme. It's so against where the mainstream of America is. That's why people are paying attention. But to your point as well, we can do more than one thing at a time. And particularly as women, we don't get the option of just doing one thing. We are feeding our families, we're raising our kids, we're doing the homework, we're working 2 jobs, and we're taking care of our reproductive health care. And as we know, this issue, to be, at least in my point of view, is this issue isn't about how you feel about abortion. This issue is about how you feel about government and politicians taking away your fundamental freedom to make the most personal decisions many of us will make in a lifetime, which is whether or when to have kids. We saw in Kansas, again, election, it was on the ballot, to allow the legislature to ban abortion in Kansas. This was going to be a tight election. It was going to be, people were like, I don't know how it's going to go. We won that by 18 points, 18 points in an electorate that was more than half of which was Republican. So there were a lot of not Democratic voters who came and voted with us. But the important thing about that is, one, I think it demonstrated that people may not be saying this on the phones, they may not be saying this on the door, but this is very distressing for average Americans, people who aren't even paying that close attention, perhaps, to politics. And it is about a fundamental freedom that people are not willing to give up. And they believe if the Republican Party is willing to take away that freedom, like Katie bar the door, right? These are folks who they're not going to stop at that. And as we know, this Congress, Democrat-led Congress by our Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, and can I just say my prayers go out to Paul Pelosi tonight, just the thought that our our elected officials are being put at risk by people who are saying the kinds of things they're saying about them. But our Speaker led us to a vote to basically ensure that birth control would be legal in this country. And only a handful of Republicans were even willing to vote in support of that. So I think it's not just about abortion, it's about a much bigger set of issues. And I think we can litigate this for everybody on this call who's talking to voters and talking to your friends who may not be committed to vote yet. We can both go on the offense on the Republicans taking away our freedoms, and also go on offense about the incredible job that the Democrats have done on rebuilding our economy, getting us out of COVID, getting the economy back on track, doing what we can to fight inflation, and frankly, doing all of it with one hand tied behind our back, because every single Republican has been committed to keeping us from making any progress under this administration. Sorry, I feel like I'm kind of sound like a crazed person. I guess I kind of am right now.
I think you sound like our inspiration. I think you sound like everything that we need to be hearing today. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was what we were hoping to hear some. I wanted to follow up on a couple of things that you said in that explanation regarding the economic consequences that we're facing. Uh, when a woman is forced to carry a pregnancy to term under the kind of dire circumstances that many are now facing with these abortion bans, what do you think about people who, and you did touch on this a bit, what do you think about people who already face the greatest barriers to economic advancement, particularly Black and brown women? And we need those votes. We need them in the game. What can you say about this circumstance, Cecile?
Well, I don't know if any of my sisters from Texas are on this call, but as we know, our state banned abortion more than a year ago, September 1st, essentially. And so we've already seen, we are the canary in the coal mine. We have seen what it looks like when you take away, not only take away everyone's ability to make their own decisions, but you actually criminalize doctors. They've created a bounty system where people can turn in their neighbors. What you create, I think to your very good question, Rosa, is you create a climate of fear, of medical providers, a fear among women, a fear among families, a fear among young people. I mean, when you talk about some of the folks who are most affected by these abortion bans, can you imagine being a young person in the state of Texas and literally having no one you could talk to, because anyone you do talk to who tries to help you is at risk of being turned in to law enforcement? We had a 26-year-old woman thrown in jail in South Texas who had gone to the hospital in what it looked like either attempt to end a pregnancy or a miscarriage. They turned her into the sheriff and she was thrown in jail, spent the weekend in jail by herself. That's the kind of future that the Republican Party wants for us. But I guess I'll say like two other things. And I have unfortunately, so many stories of what's happening, hearing from medical providers in the state, particularly medical providers who work with high risk pregnancies, unable to talk to their patients anymore about what their options can be. The two things that strike me, I was recently talking to folks in Dallas. One, a minister friend who used to be helping, their church was helping women who needed to get out of state to access abortion in New Mexico. Now they can't even do that. And he said, I don't worry about the stories I do hear. He says, I worry about the thousands of women now that we are not hearing from, right? It's not the stories that are going to make the evening news. It's the deeply personal, abandoned women who feel like they have no place, and that frankly, government is out to get them. So I think those are the folks I think we have to center in all this. And you are right. They are disproportionately, but not exclusively, Black and brown women, women with low incomes, women who've never left the state of Texas. It's not realistic to say to someone who has no car, no resources, oh, we're going to get you to fly to California. Anyway, I won't even go into it. But the other thing is important, because I think politically this is where this is going. As more and more states ban abortion, and as we start heading into these state legislative sessions, that is what's going to happen starting in January. More and more states ban abortion. This is no longer going to be a theoretical issue. People are beginning to confront it, and it's not going to age well for the Republicans. Also, a conversation I just had at a dinner in Dallas, a woman who has all the means in the world. And she said, my daughter had an ectopic pregnancy. Thank goodness it was before the abortion ban. We were able to take care of her. She's trying to get pregnant again. And I don't know, I'm terrified of her getting pregnant in the state of Texas, because she said, I don't care how fast your plane is, how fast your car is, how much money you have. She says, all I want is a healthy grandchild. And she's a Republican, right? This is not a Democratic or Republican issue. This is a issue of families and people trying to have healthy pregnancies and having the government intrude in their personal lives. And people don't like it, and they're not going to like it any better as more and more people are facing these kinds of extreme bans.
Cecile, these are the very kinds of consequences that indeed you went through that question, but these are the very kinds of consequences that we know about, but we need to learn even more about. The point that you made about the doctor worrying more about the stories that they don't hear than those that they do hear. These are the kinds of messages that I think that we, women for Biden-Harris, believe are critically important, that we are making sure that we're getting these messages out. I wanted to let you know that we hear from women for Biden-Harris leaders like Tina in Wisconsin or Ellie in North Carolina, that it's bleak out there. That's what they're telling us. But we don't want this to be all doom and gloom. Are there some specific measures in states, say for instance, ballots like the one in California that you could share with us, maybe 2 or 3 of those, and maybe 1 or 2 of others like the so-called Born Alive ballot initiative in Montana? Could we talk about ballot measures for just a moment?
Sure. I mean, and again, I think we're going to see this more and more. The interesting thing, and I would love if I could ever have a face-off with the, powers that be in the Republican Party. I'd like to say, hey, let's just put this on the ballot nationwide. See if this country wants abortion to be legal or not. I'm totally willing to take those chances, because I'll tell you, when I was at Planned Parenthood, the legislatures tried to ban abortion in South Dakota and in Mississippi, 2 of the most conservative red states in the country. And we beat those ballot initiatives handily, because you know what? The voters in those states, they could actually hold 2 ideas at the same time. One is whatever their own personal thoughts were about abortion, right? Which is, of course, everyone's business. It should be everyone's business to make their decisions about pregnancy. And they were also able to respect the fact that they shouldn't make that decision, and government certainly shouldn't, for every single person. And so I actually believe, this is an issue, this deeply American value of freedom is something that transcends generation, race, geography, and sometimes even party. I will say, in terms of like where I think we're going to be able to see the direct measurement in terms of ballot initiatives is in the state of Michigan. And I don't know, we must have some Michiganders on here. I know people are just busting their ass out there for our great governor, Gretchen Whitmer. I mean, for Dana Nessel, all the great. Yeah, I mean, it's like Michigan is, this is going to be a state where, I think where we are now and where we were a year ago, I believe the whole dynamic in Michigan has changed because of the Dobbs decision. Now, there may be Michiganders here can fill in more of that. And I think Gretchen Whitmer is spectacular. But we also know that when you're having a midterm election with a party in power, historically, the Democrats, I think, lose on average 26.5 House seats and 3 Senate seats. So it's not like what we're going through right now and the headwinds we're going through, that is historically what happens. I think the chance to break those headwinds and to rewrite this story is really based on the enthusiasm and energy of women, and not only women voters, but women like the women on this call who are actually going to just continue to do the work we need to do to turn out the voters. There's a reason why the Republicans are not talking about this issue. It's because it actually is every time. And I was like, when Lindsey Graham brought his national abortion ban, it's like they can't keep themselves from, touching the stove again. That has cemented, I think, this understanding. But we need to continue to talk about it. Like, if the Republicans should gain power in Congress, this will be one of the first things they do, is try to pass a national abortion ban. So I think it's a real educational opportunity. I think sorry, this is kind of going to maybe sound a little bit preachy, but I learned this from my years at Planned Parenthood. And that is, we don't have to get people don't have to choose a label on this issue. I think the labels of pro-choice and pro-life are both irrelevant, and they sort of make political a conversation that really isn't about politics. It is about personal freedom and personal decision-making. And so I think the most important thing that we can do as we're talking to voters, and maybe some of the women that that you don't, may not always vote, or you may not keep in touch with, or maybe they're not that political. It's not about forcing people to say where they are on the issue of abortion. That's their business. The question is, do you want a government that is making these really deeply personal decisions for you, or for your daughters or your granddaughters or your sisters or your nieces or your mothers?
Thank you so much. Cecile, we're in the countdown to November 8th, so let's talk about polling.
Okay.
We remember your mom, Governor Ann Richards, who inspired many of the women on this call today to go into politics, and her thoughts on polling. Should we pay attention to polling? What do you think? Why do you think the races are tightening? Or do you believe, if we're looking at the polling, that the races actually are tightening? We really want to hear from you on this one.
Well, I have so many thoughts about this, but I will say, I mean, I want to kind of go back to what Jill said in the beginning, which is the only poll that matters now is the poll on election day. That is literally it. Everything else is just it's for the chattering classes to have something to like fret about or talk about. And I think, as Jill also said, it is the way of suppressing our turnout. If people just feel like it's all is lost, they won't go out and vote. And so I just think it's incredibly important that we continue to stay positive. I mean, we obviously, in every single race, Sherry Beasley's race, I mean, I don't know, I could just go down the list. Maggie Hassan, Catherine Cortez Masto, Patty Murray, the Oregon governor's race. We have the votes to win all these races. It literally is a matter of who gets their people out. And so I just think it's really important to remember that. I will tell you a little Ann Richards sort of factoid, and that is, you know, when Mom ran for governor, and she was the most unlikely person to win in the state of Texas. As she said, you know, she was a recovering alcoholic. She was single. She was, and probably worst, I mean, she was a woman, and then probably worse, she was a liberal. And that was like, I mean, that's just like I don't know what's beyond a trifecta, but it was just like all those things. We never had a poll showing us winning. And we won that on election day. And it wasn't because anyone ever called that race as, oh yeah, this can happen. But it was because teachers and farm workers and LGBTQ activists who'd never really been able to serve openly in state government before, students, women who hadn't been involved in politics, firefighters, it's folks were motivated and energized and turned out in numbers we had never seen before. And so I guess that's just how I feel about elections is it's not over till it's over. And in this, given all the sort of atmospherics, I called one of my pollster friends this morning to talk about, you know, some of these reports that, well, women were kind of like coming back, you know, or they were like, you know, the independent women. He said, don't believe it. Women are with us. And young women in particular, who don't always have anybody asking them to go vote, they are really with us. We just have to do our job of getting them out to vote. And again, I don't think we can. I mean, you can probably find a fact or a poll that will support whatever point of view you want to have. But no one knows what will happen on election day. And again, I know I referred to Tom Viner earlier because I think he's had some of the most interesting analysis. He said, you know, a lot of our voters, that's when they show up. Young voters, base voters, Democratic voters, they vote on election day. So the work that we can do in the next 10 days to vote folks early if we can, but for God's sake, make sure they get out on election day. That's the most important thing we could possibly do. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, you know, you've just answered my next question, or one of the questions we had planned to ask you about how responding to hopelessness and listening to polls that tell us that women are leaving us, and since August that we're kind of losing some of our women, particularly some of the independent women. So thank you for clarifying that for us. And I wanted to tell you that I just lost my camera for a bit. I wanted to tell you that I'm in Oregon, and Senator Elizabeth Warren was here last week for our governor's race, trying to help us out a bit. And she had a story that was very similar. She talked about her race, that when she started her race, I thought it was such an incredible story. wanted to share it with the women on this call. She said she actually started 38 points down. And so the pollsters told her she had no chance whatsoever. She was
Right.
running against this handsome centerfold-like guy, and he drove a big truck, and the women were ogling and doing all of those. Yeah, Brown. Yeah. And she said on election day, again, looking at the polls, she was down by 7. And she said, I believe she said 7, but she said she won the race by 2 percentage points.
Yep.
So I appreciate so much you sharing, but especially your mother's story, so that we don't get sidetracked with them. But as you and
Right.
Jill have said, the poll that counts is election day. And I do think it's so very important that we continue to hammer that message home until November 8th. Now, I
Yep.
have a question. Here's a question
Actually,
from
can I say one thing on that too, Rosa? Because I think it's something I'm kind of interested in that will, like, I was just in Minnesota on Sunday, campaigning for Keith Ellison, the governor, the lieutenant governor, but also met the most amazing array of local women running for the state legislature, the state senate. Phenomenal. And as we know, elections aren't always driven from the top down. Sometimes they're driven from the bottom up. And so I feel like one of the most exciting things that I think is kind of less understood is the impact that that fired up local candidates are making in these midterm elections. They are changing the face of politics in these states. And we know we've changed the face of Congress, not enough, but we're getting there. So I don't think we can ever underestimate the importance not only of fighting for these top of the ticket races, but all the work that anyone does to support a local candidate, even in a safe seat, who's out getting out the vote is incredibly important. Like I just was on a Zoom with Nikema Williams, one of my former we used to work at Planned Parenthood together, and now, of course, she sits in Congress and in Congressman John Lewis's seat, and she doesn't have any serious opposition. She may not even have any opposition, but she's out there knocking doors every single day, and that's what we need: is candidates who, even if they're in a quote unquote safe seat, generating the kind of enthusiasm that we're going to need in some cases to boost the top of the ticket.
Thank you again. Cecile, this is pretty amazing. You've answered our next question once again.
Sorry.
No, that's perfectly fine. I think this is so wonderful. We were going to ask you about all the things that the women on our call could be doing up to November 8th, and particularly folks that may not necessarily want to knock on a door or do a phone bank, but all the many ways that all of us can become our own little get out the vote machine. And you mentioned some of those, but talk to us a little bit more about all the different things we can be doing if we're not doing the traditional GOTV.
Sure, that's great. And I mean, I think, Rosa, what was fascinating, the organization Supermajority that I started and now chair the board of, but is doing really focused on women voters, particularly in North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia. We had to, during COVID, learn new ways of reaching voters, right? Because people weren't door knocking. And so I think the good news is the technology is a lot better. Our lists are better in a lot of places. And so I think anybody, you can do, I mean, of course, the first, rule of organizing and any kind of relational organizing is think of your own circle, right? Write to your nieces, write to your former high school classmates, right? Talk to the woman that you see in the checkout line at the grocery store, because all of these women need to hear from us. They may not be planning on voting. They may not even know that an election is coming up. It's hard to believe, but there's a lot of folks, they're doing other things. So I think, start with your own circle. You can't underestimate how important, particularly a huge network like this, how important that can be. And again, a lot of these races, they're going to be won on the margins. You don't have to deliver a landslide. You just have to deliver critical votes that'll add to our majority. And then I think if you're kind of fired up and you've got time, there's texting, now, which is super easy. Groups like Supermajority can hook you up with that. I'm sure there are other ones within this network of people where you can text voters. And sometimes, I know it seems annoying, but sometimes people go, I completely forgot there was an election. So it's a really easy thing to do. I also happen to know, because we were just running phone banks through Supermajority, there are new phoning systems that are much better, where you're not calling people that have no idea who you're calling from, all that. I think there are a lot of things that make it a lot easier. And to me, the fun thing about it and why this group is so cool is it's so awesome to do stuff together, right? I mean, there's nothing like being on a text bank or a phone bank where people can like sort of, even on Zoom, be saying, I got a voter, I got somebody who's not registered, who's going to register tomorrow. We all need that. It's lonesome work when you're doing it on your own. So I think any of those things, and I'm happy to provide, Jill, to you or anybody else, organizations that are actually doing GO2V now, because in some of these states, we're already voting. So no time like the present.
Really, thank you so much for that. I received my ballot in Oregon on Saturday, and I filled it out and returned it on Monday. So yeah, early vote, yes, it's underway in many states. Cecile, we have women again all over the country on this call today, from all over the country. So this question is from Ellie, and it's, how do we counter Republican ads that lie on our candidates' record?
I mean, I think it's two things. We have to correct the record, but we also have to call out why they're doing it. I mean, I actually think, and I noticed, Tina, you're here from Wisconsin, where we've seen some particularly ugly ads on Governor Evers. And I'm sure I could find other folks that are from states where we're facing the same. I think that it's not enough simply just to call out what are lies, but it is important to explain why the Republicans are doing this. And it's about power. It's about a sheer power grab. That's why they're willing to lie about the record. And it's hard. It's absolutely hard. And that's, they're doing this because they have like nothing to say for themselves on what they want to do. And I do think it's important always to come back to what we are for, and what both what this administration has done. And again, I'm thinking of, Governor Evers, but there's other, Gretchen and others, good examples. We are about economic fairness for working people in this country. It's why we got the child tax credit that brought so many families and kids out of poverty. It's why, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act. It is why we passed the infrastructure so that we can rebuild our infrastructure in this country, and roads and bridges, and get internet to families and broadband where they do not have it. I was on with Sherry Beasley the other day. We were doing a Zoom, and literally her internet is like breaking up. She said, we don't even have broadband in a lot of North Carolina. I mean, it's just, these are things that people understand. So I think it's important to counter the offense, and then give them our best case for why we are Democrats and why we are supporting the people that we're supporting. But it is ugly. It's racist. It's just horrific. And we just have to stay strong and keep going. I wish that there was an easy answer. I think, for example, in the really ugly stuff that I've seen in Wisconsin, I think that the party and the governor are doing a good job of countering it. But that's why the Republicans are doing it. That's their only opportunity, is to pull us down, because they got nothing to say for themselves.
Really, really, thank you for that. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, Cecile. We've talked about the vote. We've talked about the bans. We've talked about ballot initiatives and petitions and all of the great, magnificent things we have to celebrate. So I want to talk about us for just a moment as a sisterhood. And this is a question that comes from Betsy in Pennsylvania. So many women with us today are feeling stressed and in great despair as a result of the abortion bans. You, Cecile, have been such a beacon of hope and inspiration for all of us. Can you tell us why we need to stay in this fight and to understand? You've already touched on it, but I want you to do it just a little more Tell us why this is not a lost cause.
Well,
Please.
it's, and thank you. Is it Betsy from Pennsylvania? Betsy,
Yes.
thank you for what you're doing in Pennsylvania. This is a state that we have to win, and it is going to be women that are going to make the difference. And the surge in women registering to vote in Pennsylvania after Dobbs is so heartening. So now we just got to make sure we get it, we've
Yes.
finished the job and get them and get them to vote. I guess I had said actually before the call started, I just listened to this really interesting research from Celinda Lake and Supermajority yesterday about how much how important it is for women to do this work together, that we feel more powerful. I mean, a lot of us have spent our lives being disempowered or being told that our voices didn't matter or our votes didn't matter or you name it. And I was just really struck again by something that I think we kind of know in our gut, but during COVID, I think it was easy to forget. It's just how powerful this sisterhood can be. That was really why I started Supermajority. Is I just believe in this country, if women across race and location and income and background and immigration status and everything can come together, we are the most powerful political force in this country. And it's going to take us, actually, it's going to take us to build the kind of country, not only that we want to live in, but that we want the people of America to have, and we want our children and their children to have. On this specific issue of the right to make a decision about your pregnancy, it would be one thing in terms of like how you kind of stay motivated. One, I guess the most important thing we have going for us is the American people agree with us. You know, it's interesting. I think sometimes we talk about, like, how can I convince my, fill in the blank uncle from blah, blah, blah at the Thanksgiving table who thinks that like blah, blah. It's like, forget it. If you want to talk to him, great. We don't need him. We need to bring the 70 or 80% of Americans who agree with us, be in conversation with them. And sometimes I think we as women, particularly during the Trump years, we're just like, our heads are exploding because we're thinking, how can I convince someone not to be for Donald Trump? I just want to say, like, stop. That's not our job. Our job is to build our majority and make it a voting majority. And that's hard because I think sometimes we're just so frustrated. We think, how can someone be for taking away our rights? How could someone be for women or Black people or immigrants being second-class citizens? So we have to fight all those fights, but we have to bring our majority with us. And I don't want anyone to take away our power in that way. But I also do believe in what you're doing, and the fact that y'all are still together after electing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is we have to do it together. It is because you do get weary, right? There's times you got to say, I got to take a break. And there's going to be another woman who's going to go in the field for you and take your place. And we'll say, we're going to be there when you come back. Because we didn't get in this fix overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. And I guess the last thing I just will say, which kind of keeps me going, which is, I am so blessed. I have 3 children, healthy, pretty happy. Don't have any grandkids yet, but I don't know, maybe a woman can dream. I am damned if I'm going to let my kids and young people of their generation have fewer rights than I did. That is like, those are fighting words. And I think that is what, if there's any day that I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'll just take up knitting. It's like that. That's what drives me forward. So I think that, and I hope that's a positive reason, not a, that is like to me, that's a empowering reason. I guess I'll say that one last thing. I had a brief moment where I got to work for Nancy Pelosi in Washington, D.C. when we elected her leader, and no one I love more. But if I ever feel like I'm getting tired, I just take a gander at what Nancy Pelosi is doing. And I just say, get up, put on your big girl panties and keep going. Because if Nancy Pelosi can do what she's doing, yeah, I'm sorry. She is carrying all of us on her back. As is Sonia Sotomayor, as is Ketanji Brown Jackson, as is Elena Kagan. These are the people who are doing the work for us, and we have to have this mighty sisterhood at their back.
You know, Cecile, I can't see, I have my screen on gallery view, so I can't see everybody. But in my heart, I know that as you're speaking, all of the women on this call, when you call out the names of our superstars and the work that they're doing and the gratification that we can draw from that, I can just see everybody on this call clapping their hands or putting a reactionary heart on the screen, because those are the very things that we need to be reminded of, that this is a marathon. We're not in a sprint. This is a marathon. And I appreciate that you're saying that so very much.
Yeah.
We have another question. This is going to take us back just for a moment to messaging, because messaging is an issue that Women for Biden-Harris is one of the things that we talk about, and that's necessary for us to deal with. But this question is from Sandy. It's a very specific question. Do our ads with messaging about other candidates inadvertently give them oxygen? Do you have any thoughts on that question?
Well, Sandy, I think it's a good point, but at this point in this election, most folks, at least in these battleground states, if they don't know the name of the person, the truth is they're going to go into the ballot box and have to choose a Democrat or Republican. And I think what I worry about much more is that anyone, I'll just use Pennsylvania, that any woman would go into the ballot box in Pennsylvania and just see the name Dr. Oz and think, oh, he's been on television, as opposed to, oh, he's the one who just in the debate said that decisions about pregnancy should be made by women, their doctors, and their local political officials. So I think that I understand, and sometimes we don't want to like shine a light on our opponents, and we do have to define ourselves. But this particular election, this is where I think if we have one other like amazing advantage is our candidates are like so far superior to who the Republicans have nominated in state after state after state. So we won't, I'm sure everyone has their favorite, Herschel Walker, but it's incredible to me that some of these people are in the running, and it is really important for us to make sure the voters know how extreme they are. We know because we consume news. The average, I know that American Bridge, organization I work with, I know that our research with swing voters, or kind of folks who don't always vote, they spend an average of 4 minutes a week on politics, paying attention to politics. You probably spend an average of like 40 minutes an hour. So our ability to actually penetrate into and give them information they need to make an informed vote is really, really important. And that's still true. And again, I think that's why, we're going to be seeing ads all the way to election day. And we can do that too. I mean, that's one thing too we know about women. They don't like political ads. They don't necessarily really like politics. They don't like to feel like they don't know what's going on. But you know who they trust? Women. They trust other women. So you as a validator to any woman is 40 times more effective than any ad on TV.
Again, thank you so very much. I think, Cecile, we're all watching the clock here a bit, and so what I'd like to do is ask you a question about some work that you're doing before I have to turn things back over to Jill. But we know that you also serve as treasurer for Beto O'Rourke's campaign for governor in Texas. In fact, yes, that's a reason to do a little jig. In fact, one of our super volunteers is working full time on his campaign. Can you tell us how things are going there, and tell us what we have to hope for? There is hope. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I'll just say, Beto, I am serving as finance chair of the campaign. I am raising money for him, doing whatever I can, because obviously when the state of Texas falls for us, it's going to be game over. I mean, this is worth everything we're doing. I will say, I believe that he has run a spectacular campaign, and Greg Abbott, the current governor, has given us ample opportunities to define the kind of future that Beto and I believe the Democratic Party sees for Texas and what Greg Abbott sees. I mean, whether it is the tragedy of the massacre in Uvalde of students, the horrific abortion ban and bounty system that he's now employed in the state of Texas. There is, and frankly, the cost for everyday average folk in Texas has continued to go up. As Beto says, he has driven inflation, Greg Abbott, in the state of Texas. Beto is running for a raise for public school teachers who've been underpaid in Texas for my entire lifetime. So we have the right issue set. We have the right candidate. He's going into the areas that I know, like if folks on this phone or on this call are from Ohio or Wisconsin or Michigan, we know it's not enough for us to win the cities. We have to go in. We have to go into these smaller counties, rural counties, small towns. We may never go to win them, but we have to cut our margins. And that's what he's been willing to do, is actually to travel the state of Texas and one by one, bring folks along. So I don't know what's going to happen. Again, you look at the polls, you can find a poll that tells you anything you want. All I know is he is a candidate I am so proud to be supporting. And whether we win this time or we win next time, he is really basically creating the pathway for Democrats to win statewide in the state of Texas. And I just couldn't be prouder of him. And thank you, whoever is there on the campaign that's part of Women for Biden. That's great. I mean, to see the young people that are coming in on this and like folks who've never been involved in politics just gives you energy. It's really great.
That is really spectacular, the work and the pathway that's being set there. Just one final comment. I'm watching the clock. I've got to give it back to Jill. But I wanted to remind our fearless women, and that as we go forward to November 8th, one of the most quotable quotes I've ever been privileged to hold in my heart from our beloved, your mother, Cecile, Governor Ann Richards. And I quote, "After all, Ginger Rogers did everything that Fred Astaire did. She just had she just did it backwards and in high heels." And if we don't need any more inspiration than that, but you truly are our inspiration. Thank you for being our friend. Thank you for honoring us with your time. And thank you above all else for being our sister. You are that. Thank you, Cecile.
Thank you so much, Rosa, and everybody. This is, look, no one's coming to save us. Women can do this, and we will. And so this won't be the last time that we're together, but thank you. And thanks for what you're doing to win this election. It's so important.
Rosa, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for the marvelous job moderating. So I want to close with 3 thoughts. And Cecile, I apologize because I'm going to quote you here. You earlier today said, "I would love to face off against Republicans." So when the time is right, I want to throw this out there that I know all of the women on this call would be thrilled to get behind Cecile Richards for president. The second thing I just want to do a little quick math with all of you. The name of the game, among other things in politics, is all about scale. And the reason that we held this group together is because we have critical mass. So if you do the math, if we could get, so we have 750,000 women approximately across our channels. If between now and the election, we can reach out across our channels and get every one of those women to deliver 5 votes, that's 3.75 million votes. So the power is with us. We just have to make sure that we're hammering them across all of our channels as much as we can. We just got to stay with it. And then the final thing that I think we got some slides we want to put up, but we need to promote these graphics about iwillvote.com. If there are any questions, we've got to push those heavily across our channels. And we've also got voter protection hotlines that are set up. And so we'll put those in the graphics group. I don't know if we have the ability to do them now, but they will be in our graphics resource group. And we need to be posting those constantly. So on behalf, Cecile, of all of the women, these are our administrators. These are the ladies that get up every single day and do the hard work. I cannot begin to tell you how medicinal this was for all of us, because I think people are weary, they're tired, they're afraid. And we needed a bright light, and boy, did you deliver. So thank you so much.
Great for me too, Jill. Thanks for letting me be part of this amazing community. So
Thank
really,
you.
really appreciate it.
So have a great weekend. Keep getting out the vote. Encourage women to do it in whatever way they can, and we'll just stay at it and do the best we can. Good seeing all of you.